Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. This is part 3 of the Forbidden project, and in this project I will be fabricating a bracket that holds the front brake distributor to the lower triple tree of the front forks. It's the same bracket that you can see in this image. It's actually a cheap part, but it's no longer available for sale, so I have no choice but to make my own one. As a first step, I take a piece of sheet metal and just cut out a piece that should have the right size with a Dremel tool. I've noticed that using the Dremel tool for this is probably not the right choice, and in later videos for other brackets I will just be using metal shears, since this is a waste of cut-off wheels and material and time for something that can just be done with an easier tool. So after cutting out the piece of metal, I check some measurements that I took on a piece of cardboard, and I hammer the piece flat so I can work properly with it. For the next step, I take a few measurements and then I just estimate how far I want the bracket to stand over where it's screwed in, and then I make a marking on the sheet metal for that. On that new reference line, I use the measurements that I've taken with the caliper, and I make two markings that mark the holes where they're gonna be on the triple tree. In the next step, I make another reference line to mark where the holes are gonna be for the brake distributor. To make sure the bracket is symmetrical, I mark the center in between where the holes on the triple tree will be, and then make markings for the holes for the brake distributor. After marking up everything, I use a center punch on the sheet metal and drill out all the holes. Now that I've drilled out all the holes and cleaned out the edges using a countersink, I make sure that the measurements for the holes are correct and see if everything fits up. I noticed that the holes are a little bit too close to each other, and I use a file to widen the holes so that everything matches the triple tree. It doesn't really take much and everything fits together. With the holes fitted up, I need to make a marking on where I will bend the bracket so that the bracket has enough distance from the triple tree to hold the distributor properly. After marking the line where I will bend the metal, I cut off some excess material and then I put the bracket in the vise and I bend it roughly into shape with the hammer. I then clamp the bracket in between two blocks of wood and finish out the bend. After I finished out the bend, I test fit everything to the triple tree and see whether everything fits up. The bend looks good and all the holes line up nicely. So now to make the bracket look good, I use washers held on by screws as a guide to mark out the future outlines of the bracket. Then I cut along the lines and file down any leftover material until I have the final shape of the bracket. And with that, the bracket is finished. I screw it into place and attach the brake distributor to see how everything looks and fits up, and I'm happy with it. The final bracket will still need some paint, but I think for everything on this bike I will first finish it up and after that worry about making it look good. So with that, thank you very much for watching and I hope to see you on another video in the future. Goodbye!